Life is a circle. All that grows returns to where it began, the earth. And from there it grows again, forming a perfect cycle. But we have broken that cycle. Our economy is growing unsustainably at the expense of nature. We have created a linear economic model. Make, use, dispose. We extract millions of tons of natural resources every year and turn them into materials that we use and consume. And then we simply throw them away. But what if we designed products that we can reuse, refurbish, and repair, and only extract new resources when we really need them? We would use less new materials and energy and protect our natural wealth. Carpooling, recycling materials, repairing and reusing, using green energy. Many things we already do are part of going circular. A circular economy is possible and brings new opportunities. And it isn't just good for nature and the economy, it's good for our quality of life and our health. A circular economy is a good way of living well within the limits of our planet. Use, dispose. We extract millions of tons of natural resources every year and turn them into materials that we use and consume. And then we simply throw them away. But what if we designed products that we can reuse, refurbish, and repair, and only extract new resources when we really need them? We would use less new materials and energy and protect our natural wealth. Carpooling, recycling materials, repairing and reusing, using green energy. Many things we already do are part of going circular. A circular economy is possible and brings new opportunities. And it isn't just good for nature and the economy, it's good for our quality of life and our health. A circular economy is a good way of living well within the limits of our planet.
Good afternoon. My name is Edem, General Manager at the World Trade Center Accra. It's a pleasure to connect with you for the afternoon session of the webinar, Africa and the Circular Economy. We had an exciting morning session followed by a B2B deal room. For those of our participants that were based in the US, some joined us as early as 5 a.m. We're grateful for that. The afternoon session will be opened by the Executive Director for Business Development of the World Trade Center Association based in New York, Robin. And so without much ado, I'll hand over to Robin now. Robin, take it over from here.
Well, Edem, good afternoon and good morning here from New York. Good to see you, and thank you so much for inviting me to this conference. I'm very happy also to see that this is being organized from Africa, because Edem, I'm very pleased also to let you know and all the colleagues here that we have a new member in Africa joining us, joining the association. In Abidjan in Ivory Coast. So I hope this will be a great strength to further develop the network in Africa. So again, thank you. I am Robin van Perenbroek, Executive Director of Business Development of the World Trade Centers Association. It's really so good to see so many World Trade Centers participating in this event. This is really a testimony, I think, of the value and the strength of this global network. So I promise to give just a few brief remarks, and I will touch upon three topics. One is related to sort of our overall vision. Another topic, I'll talk a little bit about branding. And then thirdly, about partnerships and then how that all correlates also in the context of your conversation today. My vision is that I see our organization, I see a World Trade Center as a true beehive of economic activity, right? Where members, as we're doing today, operate in an environment of trust. However, in this age of digital globalization, we see the globalization changing into literally a digital format. It is also important that we think about how we define trade, and we're currently redefining how we think about trade. Trade is really, it's also moving people. Trade is moving goods. Trade is also hospitality. Trade is also education. So I really am focused on, for our organization, to broaden our footprint, but also to focus and emphasize on the diversity that we currently have in our network. Hence, I would like to see more airports joining our organization, more free trade zones, universities, more conference and exhibition centers, to really expand the network and broaden sort of the base to the benefit of the entire network. Part of that is the importance of trade services. I think trade services, and this crisis has shown us, is no longer a nice to have, it is really a must have. We've taken initiatives with some of the membership advisory councils to really focus on how can we offer trade services to the entire membership. Some of our members are not wired to offer trade services. They've never done so. They're now telling us that they are interested, but how do they get started? So we're really trying to create a marketplace, so to speak, within the association, where World Trade Centers that actually offer trade services, that have excess capacity, that they could actually service this to others, to create packages where they can help other World Trade Centers offering trade services. And again, because we're all going virtual, at this point, it doesn't really matter where someone is to offer these services. So these are initiatives underway that would hopefully also strengthen and benefit the entire network. My second point is really to talk about branding. We're really building a universal global story brand. And it's absolutely important that we can speak of one voice and that brand is universally, that message is universally applicable. But what is really important when we talk about branding, and this is part of the context of the conversation today, is that as a brand, as an organization, we have to stand for certain principles. And I saw in the video, Edem, that where we started the meeting with, standing for those principles related to the environment, but also social and governance principles are extremely important. As we're operating in an environment of trust, this notion of good governance is very important. The notion of caring for the environment and social values is very important. So this is all part of the broader context of, I think, sustainability. And again, that's why a meeting like you're having today is very important. So the notion of sustainability and this environment of trust brings me to the third point, which is related to partnerships. I see partnerships as a critical tool for us to execute this vision, but also to strengthen sort of our brand equity. And there's two components to partnerships. One, and for the members who join here today, you'll see a communication coming from us very, very soon, announcing partnerships with global industry organizations that would really bring, on the one hand, expertise to our own network, to you, the members, but also offer new opportunities to connect and to network. A second component to partnerships is really going back to the sustainability question and to the standing for principles. Is I'm in a very advanced conversation with the United Nations, the Global Compact, to really for us to collaborate also to become a voice on those topics, to be part of the platform where the conversation happens. So for us, both from a branding perspective, but also from sort of our vision to who do we want to be as an organization, to collaborate with the United Nations, with the Global Compact, who basically bring together the business community with the UN system at a global level, but also offers opportunities for you, for members, for World Trade Centers at the local level to sort of connect with companies on the topics of sustainability and sustainable development goals. So hence, again, an important component to the standing for principles, but also related to enhanced networking opportunities and a place for us as a brand to have a voice. So I will leave it at that, Idem. I just wanted to share some thoughts here to your meeting. So again, thank you for offering me a few minutes here to share some thoughts. And I am always available, you know where to find me, if you have any thoughts, suggestions, questions, myself, my team in New York, we're always here and available to you. So again, thank you. And I wish you a fruitful continuation of your conference today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin. Robin comes with a good, very impressive track record in Africa. He knows the continent quite well, and a passion to promote trade, prosperity through trade in Africa. And we're very grateful that he took some time off his busy schedule to speak, to open the second session of the webinar today. As I said before we started the morning session, we're doing this webinar in partnership with 12 other World Trade Centers, which shows the power of our network and natural partnerships that we're able to bring to the events that we put together, and with a few other partners. I would like to proceed now to the first presentation of the afternoon session, and it will be made by Bezawit Eshetu, who represents the African circular economy from Ethiopia. And I'll hand it over to you now, Bezawit. It's your turn to speak.
Thank you, Ediam. So as you already said, I'm Beza from African Circular Economy Network. I'm currently working as the Ethiopia representative. So I will be just giving you food for thought, what the role of innovation hubs and business accelerators can be to promote circular products and services in Africa. To start, all roads are merging towards a common global vision to embrace circular economy. Wherever you go, left and right, everyone is assessing and exploring how to make circular economy work as a solution for achieving sustainable development. Proposals backed with research and facts have underlined the benefits of transformation, so there's no doubt about it. Political will and commitments for tangible actions are building up both in the developed and developing nations. Partnerships between stakeholders, including the private, public, academia, CSOs, everyone is trying to merge with somebody else to come up with an impact. The most interesting thing is development partners are also integrating circular concepts and principles in their products, of course, to maximize impacts. So what is actually the key for driving it at the end of the day, since we're talking about economy, is financiers and investors have already weighed the feasibility and profitability of the sector. So it's inevitable that the direction that we're taking is in that way. And pioneer organizations and individuals have showcased success stories which can actually make sense that we transform to a circular economy. I will not go to the other continent, the other side of the globe. I will focus on what Africa can bring to the table to shape or to be part of this deliberation, to make sure that the future is also part of our vision that we bring to the table. It's a young continent with skilled, trainable workforce, rapid urbanization. It's an emerging economy. A lot of countries who were considered to be below the poverty line are now moving up one step to the next middle income economy. Africa is also industrializing it might be at an early stage, but the rate of industrialization is actually quite staggering. Policy reforms and incentives for improved ease of business is attracting investors, both from the local investors and from the foreign investors, which shows you that the amount of money being generated in the continent is going to be continually increasing. What is also another thing that is booming up in Africa is increasing digital and the mobile access. It's actually quite interesting to know that COVID has its own negative impacts, but fortunately also a good impact, positive impact, where people are now moving to the digital mobile banking system, which was not a normal before COVID. As the economies are emerging, consumers are also coming on board. So selling an Apple mobile phone is no longer a luxury in Africa, but it is a must that they should also penetrate the market. It shows you the untapped market niche potential of the continent. When it comes to specific for circular economy, there are existing circular economy knowledge base which can be upscaled and make sure that we're also upscaling what is already there instead of merging to another one. So all this just shows that there is unlimited demand for products, goods, services, and energy and food supply, or even employment creation. And there is a room for embedding circular economy principles and concepts to address these gaps. Just to give you another direction, what makes circular economy different from green economy? Yes, a lot of African countries have been trying to address green economy development strategy, which is climate resilient in one way or another, either through energy or agricultural food systems, or even having a resilient system by itself. But what makes circular economy different is that I consider it to be the missing half. Instead of working on the end of life waste management, we're talking about designing at waste. It is more of a focus of sourcing materials from scratch rather than focusing on resource efficiency and cleaner production approach. So that shows you that more is on the initial phase of the production process than making sure that the production is either sustainable or clean or efficient, but more of making sure that the whole resource is recycled back into a more efficient and effective raw material back into the system. The most important thing, in my view, is circular economy is more of a systematic thinking rather than a standalone effort. Maybe green economy focuses on different sectors here and there, but when we come to circular economy, it makes sure that it is a whole rounded systematic thinking. So instead of focusing on take, make, waste, and dispose linear system, we're talking about designing, taking, making, selling, using, and disposing waste products, making it a whole circular loop. So this is just to give you a highlight on what exactly we should focus on circular when we focus on transforming or leapfrogging to circular economy. In my view, I think one interesting entry point could be incubation hubs. where you incubate the ideas for circular designs. The current development strategy is that nowadays the work culture is development designs are changing. Instead of public-led private development, we're now focusing into a private sector-driven economy models. Yes, the private sector is still at its infant stage and underdeveloped, but the trend is that people are now looking for employing themselves instead of being employed by the public sector, where they end up working 9 to 11 for a number of reasons, because we are becoming more populated and the government system is no longer able to sustain us. A lot of unemployment is rising. So instead of just sitting around, people are now thinking out of the box, saying that how can I create the jobs instead of looking for opportunities to get employed by. So that is changing. The workforce, the labor force, that's the direction it's taking. But then the problem is, since it is an infant stage, there is a serious lack of inspiration and entrepreneurial mindset for diversifying the economy. So I would say incubating hubs would be an excellent, ideal node for development centers where ideas can be experimented, explored, designed, and optimized. Students which have been taking theoretical classes at the universities would come to these innovation hubs and kind of use the 3 to 4 months time to really accelerate on their knowledge base. They get practical knowledge of what it is look like to be creating the jobs themselves. And then the young mind, I honestly don't have, I think we should acknowledge that they are quick to embrace new innovative ideas, let alone design it. But then with the mentorship from well-seasoned practitioners and experts who have already been on the market, in the market, doing the job, will actually give them a comprehensive support. Things that are actually really up in the air for a fresh young graduate would be something that a seasoned practitioner would just do it in a flip of a hand. So I would say the mentorships program in this incubator hubs is actually an opportunity for upscaling programs like our university industry linkage, which don't necessarily end up being business models, but also to enhance productivity by the government scheme. But in this case, we can use them or upscale them for circular designs. The second thing I want to mention about this network, this incubation hubs, which by the way are really mushrooming in Africa for high-tech programs, agribusinesses and others. So it's a similar model that you can really upscale for circular designs. It's the same structure. Is that this is the place where the youth come to motivate and then kind of have a group support between amongst their peer and also up and above. So that will push them to look at the bigger picture, which is another thing that's lacking in the continent. There's a lot of complaint that the youth is preferring to leave the continent instead of working in the continent. But that personally is emanates from the reason that they don't see the vision in the continent. So those incubation hubs can help to motivate them or inspire them to stay in the to develop the continent or contribute to their own way of developing it. Incubating hubs have their own unique advantage for startup ideas. It's a place where also people, investors, potential investors, come to look for new ideas, which they won't be doing in the out open areas. So in the concentrated areas, these investors or potential funding organizations would come to be in close contact with these young innovators. So it is much easier to identify and network and link with potential innovators and investors. So for a number of reasons, I I think innovation hubs are the new development centers. So now they have the new idea, which is good, excellent, but the problem is they need money. They have to make sure that these ideas should be financed. And I think the next stage is that they look for business accelerators. Access to finance is a challenge that they have to overcome. Again, the youth is the most vulnerable group in this section because they're not eligible for providing collateral support or even government schemes. So they need to find money. So accelerators can give them that startup. Monetizing ideas is always an explored terrain. It may or may not work. So business accelerators provide option for absorbing the risk associated with new ideas. That brings me to my last point. Banks and financial providers are interested and actually looking for the key factor for deciding the support they're going to give is it has to have a proven record of feasibility and profit. They're not looking for de-risking opportunities. So the accelerators can fill that gap, and these accelerators can also facilitate market linkage and integrate into the global value chain. At the end of the day, it's all about the branding and the PR that each startup can build so that they can make sure that the products and services are sold and then they make money. So I think these are the added values of focusing on incubator hubs and business accelerators. Thank you for the opportunity. We can discuss more in the discussion section. Thank you again. So I'm giving you the mic.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting presentation. Our next presenter is from the Winnipeg area. Mr. Todd Habicht has an interesting innovation that he would like to present to us, clean tech recycling in the petroleum sector. I'd like to hand over now to Todd. Todd, take it over from here.
Good morning, all. Thank you for the privilege of attending this World Trade Center discussion and group gathering on the circular economy hosted in Accra, Ghana, which is a location that is very dear to myself because it's one of the first international destinations that I had the privilege of traveling to present the regeneration technology of Enerpure. And so I've had the privilege of meeting with government officials and very senior government officials and touring the countryside, and had a wonderful time visiting Accra. And my visit there was in partnership with the Canadian government and the Ghana government. And it was absolutely focused on the application of the technology that my company has created, which is truly a circular, or about as circular as one can hope can be in the petroleum industry, where we take waste used motor oils that have very little value and are extremely environmentally hazardous to dispose of. And we turn them into a recycled, clean tech and readily consumable clean tech fuel. So the opportunity to tour around the countryside and to see just the availability of used oil. I've had the privilege of also being in other parts of Africa, and there is certainly a very significant amount of opportunity in that continent for the technology of Enerpure. I'd like to take a few moments and just go through a presentation and see if I can bring it up on full screen here. So I'll walk through what is Enerpure, a company that has been founded on technology that my grandfather fortunately started about 40 years ago. So to be able to be just in time for a circular economy, for the global concern for the environment, some of these technologies take many decades to bring to the commercial arena. And so I'm very fortunate that my grandfather started this many, many years ago. And Enerpure is technology that was developed on, like I said, technology that my grandfather created. And our corporation went through 10 years of research and development. And the research and development phase of the technology was branded under a company name of HT Petroleum. And in January of 2020, we turned the corner to commercializing the technology globally. And at that time, we felt it was best to adopt a brand that would be very reflective of what the technology did. So it's a internationally patented regeneration process to recycle waste motor oils into high quality distillate fuels. Our micro-sized regeneration technology creates a very profitable opportunity to recycle waste oil where traditional used oil recycling technologies would not be feasible. A typical used oil facility that would be traditional technology developed in the 1950s, and then there have certainly been improvements made to that technology, but the capex cost on developing one of those used oil to base oil processing facilities are in the many hundreds of millions of US dollars, and require a very vast infrastructure of collection to be implemented in order for the business model to work. And it's really a business model that is only sustainable in some of the largest and most developed economies of the world. And really even within North America, there's very limited capacity for truly recycling of used oil. So our technology is targeting the over 22 billion liters of global waste oil that is currently not recycled. Our technology has been developed over the last 10 years, and we have raised a little over 31 million Canadian to date on the project, and we are very proud to be an SDTC, or Sustainable Development Technology of Canada approved company, which is certainly a very highly regarded designation and approval in the Canadian marketplace. And our solution is that we basically have developed a technology that has been shrunk down to the size that we can bring the solution to the waste, rather than trying to collect the waste and bring it to the solution. And then within that same geographical epicenter of collection, we're able to create a product that is a clean tech fuel that can be readily used in the existing marketplace. So, and our process uses a closed loop technology that is very self-sustaining in its demand for its own energy, and in the final production, of course, is a clean tech fuel that is done in a fashion that has a very significant net reduction of GHG emissions that would be otherwise associated with improper disposal of used oil. And globally, just to put this into perspective, on a very, very conservative, but really in the positive way conservative, estimate that only 20% of used motor oils in the world are recycled, and that over 80% is effectively not recycled. Our technology goes through three processes, or three phases in the process, I guess. The first is a pre-treatment phase. Used motor oil collects a lot of contaminants just from atmosphere and from its use in the environment inside the internal combustion engine, as well as we can process industrial waste petroleum products as well. And so the next phase we go through is a refining phase that effectively converts the hydrocarbon chain molecule into the length of the molecule, or the viscosity and the lubricity and the flash points that are required to be in the distillate range. And then a final filtration phase that gives us a clear and golden product. Waste motor oil's environmental impact globally is very substantial. And of the 28 billion liters of waste oil that is annually generated, we've started already, nearly 80% of it is not properly disposed of. And in some markets, the method of disposal is by incineration, where it's just simply burnt. In some areas, it's disposed of indiscriminately by just simply dumping it into the ground, which of course then can contaminate waste water. Contamination to fresh water is well documented at about a 1 liter to 1 million liter of freshwater contamination rate. And so a very, very simple, small spill of used motor oil can be very devastating to a very significant amount of potable water. And the third method is it's burnt as a cheap industrial heater fuel. The problem with burning used motor oil is that when it's combusted, it emits about 8,000 times more lead, 196 times more sulfur oxides, 128 times more arsenic, and 35 times more inhalable or olefinic particle matters than the equivalent volume of, say, a kerosene or a diesel fuel being consumed in an industrial process. So the long story short, burning of used motor oil is incredibly hazardous to the environment, and both to the health of the individuals that would be in the immediate vicinity. Typically, the burning of used motor oil can be, the environmental contaminants can be traced out as far as about 20-kilometer radius from any process that is burning used motor oil. The waste oil market conditions globally, there's three very important factors that go into this that really support our business model. And number one is that there is an ever increasing awareness of the environmental damage from the burning and dumping of used waste oils. So the fact that there has been over, especially in the last decade, a recognition that something needs to be done. And of course, the problem with used motor oil is by the time we complete this session this morning, the volume of used motor oil will have drastically increased in the world. But in relation to the overall petroleum industry, it's a very small volume, so it doesn't really attract the attention that it typically should. However, governments, business, and just individuals, humanity as a whole, is starting to recognize the extreme devastation that improper disposal of motor oil causes. And for us, the decrease in crude oil prices has a very minor impact on the profitability of our project due to the correlation between crude oil, waste oil, and the distillate fuel prices. And we'll just show that on a slide coming up. But effectively, what it's referred to in the petroleum industry is the crack spread, and that's the spread between the raw product and the finished product. And that spread of profitability remains very, very consistent over increasing and decreasing crude prices. So the fact is that really, regardless of reasonable finished products for distillate fuels, our profitability model for our process is very strong. And especially since the International Marine Oil, or MARPOL, standard for marine gas oil was adopted globally January 1st of this year. The international shipping industry used to be a very vast consumer of used motor oil in ships. It's well documented that the 12 largest international ships plying the global waters, moving goods back and forth between the continents, the 12 largest ships in the world generates the equivalent GHG production of every passenger vehicle in the world. And removing or switching one ship over to the new DMA DMX standard for the IMO 2020 fuel is the equivalent to turning off 55 million vehicles. So the global GHG production and other environmental contaminants from the international shipping industry has been well documented. Maybe hasn't got the press and the publicity that it should have. However, Starting about 3 years ago, they began to adopt the new standard. And so the good news for the Enerpure technology is that it has created a very large additional volume of used motor oils that would have previously been consumed in a very poor fashion, and will allow for our technology to be ever more in demand. So here we have a historical petroleum market pricing showing one of the largest drops in petroleum in modern times, which happened between 2014 to 2016. And you can see that the waste oil prices in blue along the on the bottom line there effectively tracked in lockstep with crude oil, your number 2 fuel, and your diesel fuel rack pricing. So the crack spread is very, very consistent and continues even today with the effects of COVID in relation to the petroleum market price. So the business model is very secure in its profitability. Our competition is for technology is a very old technology, which is the base oil refiners. The best way to describe a base oil is base oil to a petroleum blender is the same as flour to a baker. A baker does not produce flour as a finished product. A baker takes that as a portion of the finished product that they're going to produce, just as a petroleum blender would take different variation grades of base oil and turn it into many different finished products. But only approximately, as I've said, 20% of the waste oil globally is recycled. These resellers, these base oil refiners, must sell the fuel to blenders to be processed into finished products, and they have very limited outlets for their finished product. The technology is very, very aging, and the quality standard of base oils has continued to increase. Even in the last decade, it has gone through 3 very substantial lifts in quality. And so it has created a very significant price pressure on base oil refiners. We do have base oil refiners that are very, very large traditional organizations who have been in contact with us desiring to adopt our process to their existing facilities. And although that's an exciting conversation to have, it's the cost of converting an old facility to new technology is it's the same as just buying the technology. So we're very confident and pleased in the adoption of our technology in those cases. Traditional crude oil refiners producing distillate fuel. So to put it in perspective, out of 100 liters of finished product, or like a diesel fuel, a gas oil, a kerosene, a gasoline, a naphtha that would go out to the market, motor oil represents about 0.05%. So the distillate fuel market that would consume our finished product is order of magnitude larger, basically meaning we have a very, very large consumer of our finished product. And so that's a good thing for us. And then companies using waste oil as burner fuels is one that is, as I've already said, growing environmental awareness is very much limiting the traditional practice of burning waste oil. Many facilities that were large consumers of used oil for industrial heat in the United States and Canada over the course of the last 3 years have been switching over to natural gas products, and they're no longer burning used motor oil, which has put a very significant price compression on the value of used motor oil in these marketplaces, which is also good for our business model. Our research and development center, here's a photo of the interior of our R&D center. Our entire facility takes up the footprint of roughly 3 tennis courts, is a kind of a simple way of describing it. And so inside our research and development facility, we have an entirely functioning recycling regeneration unit that can convert, and has proven to be able to convert used motor oil into distillate fuels. Our go-forward business model is to be working with strategic partners, whether that be government or industry or individuals, and joining together within marketplaces to be able to create a value add for what would be a product that has no value and would just be indiscriminately disposed, and turning it into an immediately consumable finished product. And to put a few things into perspective, our competitive technology, the closest competitive technology, which really is not being constructed anymore, but they are order of capex in the 200 to 300 million USD, and for a fully operational turnkey unit, we're around 12 million USD. Annual revenues generated from that facility would be around the 10 million, with a gross margin of 5.9, EBITDA of 4.2, return on investment roughly 34%. Of course, that return on investment is slightly varied depending on the cost of capital, whether it be debt and or equity, but approximately a 34% return on investment. And these are based on North American used oil and distillate fuel prices. In my discussions with one of my contacts from Accra, Ghana, who is in the motor oil supply business, the cost of used motor oil in Ghana would be effectively very, very, very low. And there is a slightly higher cost for the finished product than would be in the North American marketplace, or selling price. Therefore, in an example like Ghana, operating there, we would have a higher profitability than what is shown here. And nearing the end of my presentation and trying to keep an eye on the time here that was allotted, our regeneration technology is targeted for population centers of around 1 million people. And we convert roughly 80% of 100 liters of product into a finished saleable product. So out of 100 liters of waste motor oil, a small portion of it would be water, and then that's typically about 3 to 4%, and then 80% we generate in a saleable product, and the remaining is a product that we consume in the production. So we don't require any additional energy input to be able to power our process. It is truly a standalone. We could operate one of these units in the middle of the ocean if there was used motor oil out in the middle of the used ocean, and if we could get one of these things to float. They're very much a standalone unit, and approximately 24 million liters of annual input to about 18 million liters of finished product. Facility footprint, when it's all said and done, is roughly 1.5 acres. Our design is for manufactured, not on site, but is a modular, and then allows for easy transportation, all skid mounted, and very simple commissioning, and we operate 24/7. Life cycle analysis of California has created and completed a study, and each individual Enerpure regeneration unit that will be operating will generate greater than 10 kiloton per year of GHG emissions reduction. So it's a very, very, very substantial process. What makes our technology unique? Very significantly lower capital and operating costs compared to traditional waste oil refining. Finished product can be sold and consumed in the same geographic market of waste oil collection. My friend Minta Jumpo from Accra, Ghana, I love to quote him. He said, "Give me 20 feet of rubber hose and a wooden sign, and I could sell every," and I've always thought it kind of interesting, he referred to it as every teaspoon of finished product. In the petroleum industry, we don't normally meter out the product by teaspoon, but yeah, it's very easy to be readily consumable. Our micro-processing makes the business model possible in areas where others just simply would not be feasible. And the skid mount and standardized design allows for efficient deployment. And of course, the environmentally friendly footprint and operation is yes, very, very significant. So that would be the end of my formal presentation on what is the Enerpure technology, and look forward to some further discussion in the Q&A portion, and looking forward to my fellow presenters for the remainder of the session. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Todd. So if you're following the presentation and you have a question, feel free to drop the question in the chat box or to use the Q&A window to drop that question. And the presenters will answer it directly there, or will pick it up and answer it to the entire audience. Our next presentation will be made by.
I
Yes.
forgot to say one thing. I apologize. Akwaba.
Yeah. This shows truly that you came to Ghana. Todd just said welcome in Chi. Our next presentation will be made by Catherine. Catherine, if you are here, kindly take it over. Yes.
Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you very much for having me today. Thank you to all of our attendees for joining on these very important topics. Thank you, Todd, for your presentation. Thank you to all my fellow presenters. I am honored to be a part of this forum. I think we're touching on some extremely important topics, and I'm looking forward to see the progress in the future that comes out of these discussions. I will be talking about the circular economy of electronics, the electronics that we use on a daily basis, our cell phones, our laptops, all function with some fundamental minerals that cannot be removed from the process of production. So we'll be talking about why a circular economy is necessary, the secondary life options for these minerals in these electronics, and I'll be telling you a little bit about my story. My story is also somewhat circular in nature. So I am Catherine Cerisa. I'm here with the World Trade Center Denver in Denver, Colorado in the US. Behind me, I have the Colorado flag, and I come to the World Trade Center Denver as the Director of Business Development. So I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to speak with you all. Hopefully after this, as many as possible would love to get in touch and continue the conversation. I came here to Denver via the West Coast, via Thailand. I was in South America for a bit. I'm originally from a suburb of New York City, and I studied anthropology in my undergrad and had an interest in learning about foreign nations and foreign cultures, which brought me to Thailand and doing the Peace Corps and learning that I really wanted to serve other humans. And so in that time, I was deciding, what did I want to do? And I decided I wanted to be a trade diplomat. What did that mean? I had no idea at the time. I was young. I knew I wanted to enter into trade negotiations that mitigated conflict. I knew I wanted to end conflict with private sector trade negotiations. I knew it was possible because I'd seen it in the media, I'd seen it in the news, and it was a topic that was very near and dear to me in my heart because one of my best friends had naively gone off to Iraq and lost his life. And I thought that was a conflict that was spurred around minerals, around the minerals and fossils that we pull out of the ground to put into our cars. And so I feel very strongly that private sector has a big impact on resolving the conflicts that they also often have an impact in starting. And so then I decided that I should do everything I could to learn about conflict mitigation, specifically surrounding minerals. And I came here to Denver, Colorado, to embark in graduate school, where I learned about conflicts surrounding minerals all over the world, in Myanmar or Burma or the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And so when I learned about the conflict in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, I was very motivated to become a part of the solution, because I felt not anyone that I had spoken to in my social realm had ever heard of the conflict in the DRC. not in decades. I think that mostly people had thought that it had been resolved, or that it was on the way to being resolved. But in fact, the conflict in the DRC was still raging. And in 2010, the International Rescue Committee reported that 5.4 million people had lost their lives to the conflict in the DRC, and that it was the most lethal conflict since World War II. And so I was shocked. How did I not know that? And why did I not know that? And why didn't I ever have the opportunity to learn about that? And so I dove in and I dug in and I did my research and I wrote my papers. And I came out of grad school engaging with this very, very small startup in San Diego that provided conflict minerals due diligence for major corporations. And the reason for that is because there had been a regulation that had been formed, Dodd-Frank Act 1502, which was in response to the Wall Street Reform Act here in the US during the 2008 to 2010 financial crisis. We had regulations that were written by senators responding to the big banks and the crisis. And there were some senators who also got some rules written into that big stack of regulations that were pertaining to supply chains. So we had supply chain rules around safety in mines, or supply chain rules that were written about foreign investment in mining. And then we had Act 1502, which was the conflict minerals rule. And the reason these rules were written were so that companies had to provide transparency. And so I'm going to share my screen. And so the minerals that we are speaking to are the minerals that are in your everyday appliances and devices. So we have tin, tantalum, and tungsten and gold. So 3TG, tin, tantalum, tungsten, and gold were the minerals that the regulation was written about. And what the regulation stated was that every publicly traded company had to report where they sourced tin, tantalum, tungsten, and gold. And so that being the case, so many companies said, we have no idea where our tin, tantalum, tungsten, or gold come from, in fact, because many big companies just use automated procurement or bidding systems where they select the fastest speed and the cheapest price from their suppliers. So they don't know maybe even their second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth or 60th tier of their supply chain. They don't know where these minerals are extracted from the ground. And in fact, there were a bunch of NGOs that had made it very public that these minerals are primarily extracted from the grounds of nations. And so that is why I would like to show you this map. Okay. And it is of the DRC and the surrounding nations. And so hopefully you can see that here. Okay. And so the DRC has 9 surrounding countries. And so we have 10 countries that are covered by the conflict minerals rule. And so the point of the regulation was to mandate that companies were to disclose if they were sourcing from the DRC or the 9 surrounding countries. And so many companies had to go and do their due diligence and learn from their suppliers, where are they sourcing from? And then those suppliers had to go down in their tiers and learn where they're sourcing from. And so while I was with this small company in San Diego and we were assisting these very big companies and learning where they were sourcing from, we started to understand that many companies didn't have that intelligence. And so we were assisting them in finding out where they were sourcing these minerals from. And so that being the case, I ended up working with many big companies and helping them to do their due diligence and provide their public reporting and come to their determinations of what countries they were reporting from. And being that we were one of the few small organizations doing this, we then ended up catching the eye of Amazon.com, where I then went up to work for Amazon to formulate their conflict minerals compliance program. And so while we were doing our due diligence at Amazon and asking our suppliers to tell us where their minerals are coming from, and them asking their suppliers, we realized this is really a very complicated process. And so we created a product on our own called Transparency, where we would allow brands, and we sold this product, to disclose on their transparency to consumers. So consumers could reward those companies that are providing the most transparent disclosures. And so I always am very pleased in forums like this because we're spreading awareness. We're asking customers to ask the questions, where are your minerals coming from? Because oftentimes they're coming from places where there's deregulation, lack of visibility, or there could be very violent conflicts. And there is quite often also child labor issues and slavery issues in these places that are far away lands to people like me sitting here in Denver, Colorado, using my cell phone and maybe not knowing where the minerals in my cell phone come from. So it's important to ask those questions, where do these minerals come from that are in these products that I'm showing on this screen? And so that's one thing I'd like everyone to walk away with, is asking, you know, where does the stuff that make my things come from? And we'll get to the very important topic of circular economics now. So the minerals that we put into these devices have a life cycle of their own, but many of them can be recycled. Some of them cannot, but it's very important to recycle as many as we can, because we know that they're finite, and we know that there is risk in the sourcing, and we know that we're not going to have the security of knowing that these minerals are always going to be at our fingertips. They're going to be scarcity, there's going to be price fluctuations, there's going to be many challenges to extracting these minerals in a safe and socially conscious way, and an environmentally friendly way that doesn't provide any degradation to the communities around these minerals extraction. Oftentimes you have to use chemical elements to get these minerals out of the ground, and that can get into the groundwater, can leach into communities, can cause health hazards. So the less extraction that we can do, the better. So we want to minimize extraction, and we want to maximize recycling, reuse, repurposing, and giving these minerals a second life. So that is something that I focused on whilst at Amazon, and was a co-founder of the circular economics team there. And we focused on working with our suppliers to make sure that they were recycling minerals and pieces and parts and boards and chips in the production of our devices. And so that's where I learned quite a bit about the recycling that can happen within devices, within the device arena. And electronics recycling is one of the most difficult areas of recycling. Paper, I think we've all got pretty down pat. Plastic, we're getting better at sorting and recycling. Electronics recycling is very difficult because it requires, very oftentimes, the very good technology uses magnets to extract the different pieces and parts and minerals, and you have to take the devices apart, and then you have to pull out what's good, and you have to do tests to make sure that the pieces are still usable. It's a very, very expensive process. And so that's why we all need to focus on making sure that we return our electronics so that we can assist these electronics recycling companies, be they the small recycling company in our local city, or be they the very big recycling efforts done by Apple, or for example, or I want to give kudos to, they have a fantastic electronics recycling program. And I've got a picture here of the robot Daisy that recycles their electronics pieces and parts. And so it's important that all of us try very hard to recycle our electronics, because it's important that these electronics get a second life, because it's important that we reduce the minerals extraction process and we reduce the risks that are associated with minerals extraction pertaining to human rights, pertaining to keeping children safe, pertaining to keeping people safe, and pertaining to keeping communities from being harmed at the source. And so it is a difficult balance because we want to recycle, we want to reduce extraction, but we don't want these minerals based economies that we extract from to be in a lurch. That's why we need it to be collaborative with the local economies. We need it to be collaborative with the countries that these minerals are primarily extracted from. So it's quite a conundrum and no one has the solution yet. That's why it's such a collaborative effort, and many organizations that work independently need to come together. And so I'd like to just highlight some of those organizations that do very good work on this subject. The Responsible Minerals Initiative based out of DC. They've created industry standards that most of these private sector manufacturers have to adhere to so that they are focusing on eradicating slavery, eradicating child labor, and making sure that their environmental impacts are minimum. So it's very important that we all learn about these industry standards and that we purchase from those producers that are the most ethical, because we want to make sure that we're purchasing from those that are extracting in an ethical manner. And then we also really want to focus on making sure that we're recycling, and giving our minerals a second life. So that about wraps up my time for today. The overarching theme being there are risks associated with the minerals that are in our devices that we use on a daily basis, our cell phones and laptops, and that we want to make sure we recycle those electronics as much as possible. And in any way we can, we want to focus on where do our products come from and how are they being made and what are the companies disclosing publicly? How can we see what they're telling us and how transparent they're being? And let's please reward those companies that are being transparent and doing good work. And let's please those companies that are not being transparent and are not telling us where their products are sourced from, let's consider substitute options. And so I hope that I've done my best in enlightening everyone today on why electronics recycling and giving the minerals in our electronics a second life through that recycling process is so important. And thank you again for having me today. I'm honored to be a part of this forum.
Thank you.